Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Thursday, August 20th. I'm Blair Kerkhoff. We're talking Royals today with beat writer Lynn Worthy. So much happened in the team's doubleheader with the Cincinnati Reds on Wednesday, and we get through it all, from another fantastic start by Brad Keller, to Matt Harvey's debut in a Royals uniform, to the status of Salvador Perez, who didn't play on Wednesday, and through Mike Moustakas' tribute by his former team. After a break, you'll hear from Royals manager Mike Matheny, and we're going to play another piece of audio for you. It's of Reds broadcaster Tom Brenneman. You'll hear an apology for something he said on the air, a slur when he didn't think the microphone was hot. Anyway, let's get started with Lynn Worthy. All right, Lynn, for a 14 innings worth of baseball on Wednesday, there was a lot going on between the Royals and the Reds. I wanted to touch base with you to talk about a lot of topics, but let's start with the starting pitching for the Royals in both games. Is Brad Keller going to give up a run this season?
You know, sooner or later, it's bound to happen. It just doesn't look like it's happening anytime soon. I mean,
right?
17 and 2/3 innings now of not giving up anything, and then for the first five, on Wednesday, he didn't give up a hit. So he's been in sort of cruise control, it looks like, so far.
It's really he's really dazzling. His slider is wonderful. Looks like he got a lot of his punch outs on sliders yesterday.
Yeah, and he talked earlier this year about that being one of the pitches that he worked on, specifically talking about punch outs, like that he felt like last year and years past, he'd thrown it with two strikes, but he'd really been bouncing it. It had been more of a waste pitch, and, guys weren't really offering. And it's something that he's worked at, making it look more like, strike to ball, where guys are swinging over the top of it, and you're getting guys, it's a wipeout slider as opposed to just showing them something and wasting the pitch when you get two strikes on guys.
Right. And as you said, 17 and 2/3 scoreless innings to start the season. I think that's the most by a Royals pitcher since, was it Zack Greinke in 2009? And that was his Cy Young Award winning season, I believe. I believe I'm right about that. And he was hit, and of course, hitless through 5 innings with the Reds. And I believe this was his second start against the Reds. So a lot of the success has come against the same team, but the Reds stacked the lineup yesterday, didn't they?
Yeah, they put a bunch of left-handed hitters in that lineup. And it was funny because Brad mentioned it after the game. And I asked him, I said, so did you sort of take that as a challenge? As in, like, okay, this is how we want to go about it? And he said, well, it was kind of hard not to notice. It was glaring when you look at the lineup. And I think if I remember right, it was 6 left-handed hitters and then a switch hitter. So basically 7 guys in a 9-man lineup is what they threw at him. And going into the game, I think, like on-base percentage for left-handers was like 200 points higher than right-handers against Keller this year. But it didn't show on Wednesday.
No, he didn't. I mean, and then, look, I don't know if a pitcher would take any more satisfaction out of a 7-inning or any less satisfaction out of a 7-inning complete game versus a 9-inning complete game. I suspect maybe they would a little bit, but he didn't get to finish it up. Trevor Rosenthal came in and closed it down. Anyway, Brad Keller throwing the ball as well as any Royals pitcher, starting pitcher we've seen in a little while. He is just he's just lights out good. I guess his next start's going to come against a Twins team in this next series, would it not, if the rotation stays the way it is?
Most likely. I actually asked about that before the game because, you had this doubleheader, but you also have an off day. So trying to figure out when Keller would throw next. And I didn't really get a clear answer on that because,
Gotcha.
Anytime you have a doubleheader, you got 2 starters thrown on the same day, but you also have an off day, which means basically you just could give somebody an extra day of rest usually. It remains to be seen, but I would assume because Keller was supposed to throw on Tuesday, and that's the game that got wiped out, that he'd be good to go for I think next Tuesday was, as I did the math, was the day that okay. But again, they didn't say for sure that that's what they're going to go with there, because by then Junis could be eligible to come off of the IL too. So I'm not sure how that's going to factor in.
Right. Okay, so game 2 was interesting as well with the Royals debut of Matt Harvey. And there were some moments for Harvey in this game, and ultimately not a great outing. I don't know how he tell us how he felt about it after the game. He's a losing pitcher in a 5-0 game. He gave up a couple of home runs, struck out 4. I saw where he got his fastball up to about 95, and of course the velocity's been the concern for him as over the last couple of years, the decreasing velocity. How did he feel about his performance?
He felt pretty good just in terms of the way he felt, the way he was able to pitch. He felt like he made two big mistakes, that being the 2 home run balls, because he gave, one home run was a solo, and one was a 2-run homer, and they both came in the span of 3 pitches. So he felt like those two were just, he made 2 awful mistakes, but other than that, he felt like he performed pretty well considering, this is a guy who last year, he felt like he was out of whack mechanically. He went from pitching for the Angels and having some okay outings to, one of those being in Kansas City, and then going to, being in Oakland's minor league system and pitching in relief, I believe it was in the minors, and then having all this time since the end of last season where he had no team. He was just,
Right.
Anybody could have had Matt Harvey. He was out in the street, up until the Royals signed him in late July after, the actual regular season had started this year is when they made that signing. So he's talked about really doing some work to sort of almost retool his mechanics because he felt like what they had him doing with the Angels was different than the way he'd thrown it. So he'd gone back, even actually gone back to working with his father, who was his high school coach, on just throwing the way he used to throw again. So he felt like it was a good step with 2 big mistakes in the middle of that.
Okay. So what do you think the Royals are thinking for him going forward? What's going to be his role?
I would think that they haven't said this, but I would think that bullpen might be the ideal place for him where you still got some, like you've got the top end of that bullpen, or I should say the back end of that bullpen, the high leverage guys are pretty solid, but then there's, the meat of that bullpen when you're throwing in some of these other guys, whether it's Gabe Spire, who got thrown in there last night and actually got optioned after the game. There's some question marks there. There's some instability, I would say, or inconsistency there. I mean, the Jake Newberry will show you some really good stuff one time and then get hit around a little bit the next time. We've seen Kennedy have his ups and downs and been used in an opener role, but also been used in high leverage. So I think there's a few guys with question marks. I mean, you had Glenn Sparkman in there earlier in the year. Obviously, he's injured, but I mean, like there's guys in that bullpen to start the season when you had a larger bullpen too, but that you had some question marks about, which means that there's room for improvement in that bullpen, and I think that he might be one of those guys that they look at as he can give you some short outings, he can potentially give you some length depending on what role you want to use him in. I had asked Dayton Moore last week before we knew Harvey was coming up, just about what they saw for him, and they felt like he could be potentially depth as a starter, but also a bullpen guy. So I think that's probably where the more immediate need is, especially if Junis is able to come back here pretty soon. Um, and even if you look at last night, I mean, it's his first outing, but I mean, the first 2 innings were really good. And then the third inning, he started facing the lineup the second time around, and that's when he gave up those home runs.
Right. His 4 strikeouts were impressive. Fastballs kind of up in the zone, and guys look. I think the first 3 of the 4 were strikeouts looking on fastballs. So I guess, and I guess the whole 2015 World Series thing has run out, right? He got to address that last year when he pitched against the Royals as a member of the Angels, and nothing, the pivotal Game 5, of course, in 2015 was in New York, not in Kauffman Stadium, so it wasn't like all those questions have been asked and answered, I guess, with Matt Harvey.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, he even mentioned that one. I mean, for him, the memory is being pitching in the World Series, and obviously it didn't go the way he wanted to. But I mean, like to have gotten to a World Series and have been, the guy in the World Series. I think that's something that he wants to remember, as fondly as you can for having, lost the World Series. But I don't think it's a dread or anything like that for him to have been. And now being with the Royals, he actually talked about how the atmosphere and when you actually had fans in the building back in those days, just talking about the atmosphere and the fans and the excitement in Kansas City. So I think if anything, he looks at that as um, a seminal moment just in terms of what he's done as a baseball player, and not so much something that's a knock against him. And he even went on. I mean, just in general, he talked about just being glad to be back in baseball because like I said, he was anybody could add Matt Harvey, and didn't sound as though there was a whole lot of takers until the Royals came knocking. So yeah, I don't think the 2015 sits with him as a bad thing at this point. I think he's just trying to get back into baseball and show that he's got some value.
He was the game one starter as well in the 2015 World Series and was on his way to get the victory until Familia gave up the home run to Alex Gordon in the ninth. So sent the game in extra innings. All right, let's a couple other things about of recent news. Just the fact that Mike Moustakas returned to Kauffman Stadium. He did not play against the Royals when the Royals were in Cincinnati earlier, but he was in the lineup and got one of the hits off of Keller yesterday. But a little nice tribute from the Royals to Mike Moustakas, who left Kansas City in really good graces and much appreciation for what Mike Moustakas did for this organization. It just seemed like Moustakas was ready to return the good feelings and good vibes that he got from here.
Yeah. I mean, even he didn't play in that series in Cincinnati because he was on the injured list, but he did do a Zoom call, and
Right.
during that call, he was glowing about in his praise of former Royals, his experience with the Royals, talking about Alex Gordon being one of the guys that he looked up to as far as how to be a professional. And then he talked more, before the game yesterday about just how how important it was or how great it was to sort of have this feeling of a place that was so important to him and his career and his life, and to feel that he was important to them as well. And just to be able to be back, and even though there's not fans there, to be able to see, and he started listing, whether it's Dayton or, Dayton's, assistant Emily, or Scott Sharp, assistant GM, Lonnie Goldberg, scouting director, all these people that, just like meant something to him, even though he's not, able to see fans. And then obviously the guys that he's, I think there was a video clip of him and Gordo talking before the game. So yeah, I think it was a moment that, it would have been cool to see fans there. They did put together the video tribute on the board before the game, and Royals players, I mean, and some of those guys played with him. Some of those guys, don't really know him, just know that he was with the Royals and obviously what his legacy was. But gave him, applause, as did some of his own teammates in his dugout before the game. So it was cool to see that even without the fans, and like that's usually the thing everybody says, "Oh, what sort of reaction do you think you're going to get from the fans?" There was no reaction from the fans, but there was still a moment that was, worth recognizing, that he felt was special, and obviously the organization wanted to recognize.
Of course, Moose left Kansas City. He was the Royals record holder for home runs in the season with 38, and then of course that record was obliterated last year by Jorge Soler with his 48 home runs. Let's talk about Soler for a second. Is he coming out of this kind of slump he was in? Boy, he had a streak of strikeouts going. But he had like 5 straight games of at least 3 punch outs, and but he's homered since then, and maybe got another base hit. And is he looking better at the plate?
He's if nothing else, he's making contact, because that was the thing. The strikeouts were just, it was a whole lot of swing and a miss, a whole lot of just, taking a look at the third strike and go have a seat. Yesterday he had a double to drove in the first run of the game, in the game they won. He had the another single that was sort of looped in there. So there's signs that he's starting to come out of it. I think one of the games the other day, after he had a bunch of strikeouts, he actually came out, and I think he was swinging it early in the count. And, it just seemed like he was, for a stretch there, he was just off in terms of it seemed like he was looking for a pitch that wasn't there. And then he wasn't looking for the pitches that were there that, you feel like, whoa, that was the one to hit. So it seemed like he was just off for a stretch in there. But, and Mike Matheny talked about them too, coming back home and being able to get some early work in and getting guys going on basically the breaking ball machine and just getting out there and getting guys back into the swing of things. And he thought that would help definitely a certain number of guys, Soler being one of them, because, they were on the road for that stretch. And then you have an extra day off. So we'll see if, maybe being back in Kaufman, you don't really hear that too often, that being back in Kaufman is going to help a slugger get back on track. But we'll see if that helps or, but yeah, it looked better, at least at points last night, in the way he was approaching those bats.
All right. Okay. Hey, and finally, what about Salvador Perez? He didn't play yesterday. Blurred vision, is that what I saw? What's going on with Salvi?
Yeah, he's experienced some blurred vision in his left eye. They said it was just a buildup of fluid. That it was nothing serious. It should go away on its own. And they were talking to he's seen a pair of specialists at this point. One he talked to while they were on the road in Minnesota, and then the other after they got back to Kansas City. And it was both the same thing. That it's not anything serious. It's not, as far as we know, it's not the sign of anything else. It's just a matter of he's got a little bit of fluid, and it's making it hard to see. It's that that left eye. So hitting sometimes can makes it difficult for him to get a real read on the ball, and then obviously behind the plate. So it's he tried playing with it one game, and he was having trouble with the vision again. So they decided to pull him out, and then now they're basically trying to wait and see. They think it could be just a few days. They haven't put him on the IL yet. I think they're considering whether or not to do it, but at the same time, they feel like if it's something you can get done or get him back out there in like 7 days as opposed to the 10 days on the IL, then they want the extra 3 days. I think that's basically the approach they're taking right now. Like they want those extra 3 days of him playing as opposed to having him sit. So that's where they're at with that right now. He's day to day as far as his availability.
Okay, as you said, Lynn, off day today for the Royals, and then on Friday they start their, I believe, 19th series against the Minnesota Twins this season for 3. A lot of Twins and Reds in the Royals recent weeks here. But, hey, it's great catching up with you. Thanks for the updates. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have some sound from the Royals doubleheader yesterday. Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. That was Royals beat writer Lynn Worthy. Here's what Royals manager Mike Matheny had to say after Brad Keller's start in the first game on Wednesday. Remember, the Royals were between games here. Matt Harvey had yet to make his start.
He was special, and I think he got into a rhythm where his breaking ball was just as good as his fastball was. He had his fastball going towards both sides of the plate. He had it cutting at times. He had good sink when he needed it. Got his double plays. Guys played well behind him. Monty with a couple really nice plays. And then he wasn't afraid to even go to that changeup. Got a strikeout with it, and against a very tough hitter actually. So he just keeps kind of building some confidence in all the different pitches instead of just trying to overpower guys. I thought the breaking ball had some awkward swings at it all day, and he felt really confident with it and was able to throw it in all counts. And just that's a great job when we needed that. Obviously, as you start looking into a doubleheader, to have your guy just about finish the whole thing for you. Monty and Soler seem to be in the middle of everything offensively. Say that again, I'm sorry. Soler, Mondesi seem to be the middle of most offensively. Yeah, and just a couple really good at-bats by Soler to give himself just, driving the ball to the left field line, just some confidence to find the barrel, and same with Monty. And then once he gets on base, making things happen again. And just amazing when he gets on what happens, whether it's the stolen base, the dirt ball read again, and then to pull the infield in or a contact play happens. And the defense has to think, I've got to be as quick as I possibly can, which then forces a play to give Witt a chance to get the ball through the infield. And, he just needs to keep doing that. We talked about this before the game. Monty, you've got a chance with your skill set to change every single one of these games, maybe even without getting a hit. Just keep doing what you're doing, and the hits are going to come. Unfortunately, able to squeeze one in there and a couple for Soler is certainly a great shot in the arm for him.
Mike, I know we've talked about Brad before, but do you sometimes have to remind yourself, like, this guy's 25 years old and he's doing this at the consistency that he is?
Yeah, we do forget how young he is. One, because he's the guy who took the ball first game last year. You got a guy who's wore that badge of honor of being the ace of your staff, and then he goes out there and leads by example. One, in how he does the work, and obviously how he's competing. But it's fun to watch a guy who thrives on those situations. He wants to be the guy on the mound. He wants to be the one to set the tone for the rest of the group, and hopefully it just continues to create that great internal competition it's a healthy competition for all of our pitchers to kind of take the previous start. All right, now watch this. If that's the case, Matt Harvey's got his hands full after that one, because that was some kind of display of quality pitching by Brad.
That was Royals manager Mike Matheny after the first game of the doubleheader against the Reds. It was during that game that Reds broadcaster Tom Brenneman made a mistake that could cost him his job. He didn't know he was on the air when he used a homophobic slur. It was during the second game that Brenneman made the apology and asked for forgiveness. You'll hear that here. And about 10 seconds in, Brenneman also calls a Reds home run.
Myself and think of myself as a man of faith. As there's a drive in a deep left field by Castellanos, it will be a home run. And so that'll make it a 4-0 ball game. I don't know if I'm going to be putting on this headset again. I don't know if it's going to be for the Reds. I don't know if it's going to be for my bosses at Fox. I want to apologize for the people who signed my paycheck, for the Reds, for Fox Sports Ohio, for the people I work with, for anybody that I've offended here tonight. I can't begin to tell you how deeply sorry I am. That is not who I am, and never has been. And I'd like to think maybe I could have some people that can back that up. I am very, very sorry, and I beg for your forgiveness.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welch, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Lynn Worthy for stopping by and talking Royals. You can find his Royals coverage on kansascity.com. Earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands. It's still a good one, $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes Sports Extra that comes with the e-edition. There's more than 50 additional pages of national sports coverage today. Well, here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage that come with the e-edition. The details can be found at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting in supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Friday with another episode.